I've lived in Seattle for 12 years now. This city smells of coffee and rain, and even in August the clouds hang so low it feels like you could reach up and touch them. I've always loved that soft gray light. It calmed me, helped hide the personal worries I didn't want to face. I met Emma in a small coffee shop on the corner of Pine Street. She had that rare gift of smiling with her eyes, not just her lips. A year later, we were married, and I was certain it was forever. We had a cozy apartment overlooking Puget Sound, a wooden table where we'd have dinner under the warm glow of a lamp, and evening walks along the waterfront. Everything felt right. But in the past few months, something shifted. Not suddenly, more like water slowly seeping through a crack in the roof. At first, I noticed Emma staying late at work more often. She said her projects were piling up, that clients were impatient. I believed her. Or maybe I just wanted to believe her. In early October, I stumbled upon the first clue, something strange on her phone. I only wanted to send a photo from her phone to my laptop when I saw a chat labeled D with short, cryptic messages. Same place? Can't wait. My heart pounded louder than the rain outside. But I closed the chat, pretending I hadn't seen it. I told myself it could be nothing. Then came the little things. A new perfume I'd never bought for her. Red lace lingerie hanging in the closet, the price tag still attached. She stopped asking how my day went. When I told her I missed her, she'd reply absently, "Me too." One Friday evening, I suggested dinner at our favorite lakeside restaurant. She said she had to stay late at work. I went out for a walk instead, but somehow ended up near her office. And there, like a scene in slow motion, I saw her walk out of the building, not alone. A tall man in a gray coat was holding her hand, and she was laughing, that same laugh that used to be only mine. I stood in the rain, the drops mixing with something hot on my face. At home, I waited in silence. She came in, peeling off her damp coat, freezing when she saw me sitting in the dark living room. "You're home early," she said, avoiding my eyes. "Emma," my voice shook. "Who is he?" Silence. Just the soft patter of rain on the window. "It's not what you think," she began, but her words faltered. "Not what I think. I saw you. I saw the way you looked at him." She sat on the couch, burying her face in her hands. I don't know how it happened. It started with just talking. I was lonely, and you were always working." Each word hit like a hammer. Yes, I worked a lot. But I did it for us. For that home, for a future she was apparently already building with someone else. I stood, walked into the bedroom, and pulled out a suitcase. I packed quickly but carefully. She tried to stop me, touching my arm, crying, "Don't go. We can fix this." Her voice broke. "No, Emma. Some things can't be fixed." When I stepped outside, the rain still hung over the streets in a misty veil. The streetlights reflected on the wet pavement, and my chest felt hollow. I didn't know where I was driving that night, but I knew I wasn't coming back. Seattle has always smelled of rain. But now, to me, it will always smell like goodbye. I didn't make it far that night. I drove aimlessly through the rain-slick streets of Seattle, windshield wipers fighting to keep up. My mind was a tangled mess of anger, disbelief, and the stubborn hope that maybe, just maybe, this was all a mistake. I pulled over at a deserted gas station on Aurora Avenue and sat there with the engine idling, staring at my reflection in the dark window. After 20 minutes, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Emma. "Please come back. We need to talk. I'll tell you everything." Against my better judgment, I turned the car around. The drive back felt heavier than the one leaving. When I walked into the apartment, she was sitting at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had already gone cold. She looked up at me, her eyes red. "I didn't plan for this to happen," she whispered. "He's Daniel. We met through work months ago. At first, it was just company. Someone who listened when you didn't have time. So it's my fault?" I shot back, my voice sharper than I intended. "No," she said quickly, shaking her head. "It's mine. I crossed the line. But I didn't sleep with him." Her words hung in the air like cigarette smoke, impossible to ignore but hard to fully breathe in. "Not yet?" I asked. She flinched, and I knew the answer without her saying it. That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain. Every sound from the bedroom felt like a reminder of what I was losing. Over the next few days, we moved through the apartment like strangers. We'd speak only when necessary. About bills, groceries, the cat's vet appointment. But there was a tension under the surface, like a bridge cable about to snap. On the third night, I came home early from work. Her coat was missing from the hallway. I told myself she could be running errands, but an old, ugly instinct pushed me to check the location-sharing app we'd once used for convenience. She was at a small hotel just outside downtown. I didn't think. I just drove. The lobby smelled faintly of bleach and stale air. My pulse was in my throat as I asked the receptionist if Emma Carter was a guest. She smiled politely, tapped her keyboard, and said, "Room 214. I climbed the stairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. The hallway was quiet except for the muffled hum of a TV behind one of the doors. When I reached 214, I didn't knock. I turned the handle, unlocked. What I saw inside froze me in place. Daniel was standing by the window, his back to me, shirt sleeves rolled up, a glass of whiskey in his hand. Emma was sitting on the edge of the bed, her hair slightly messy, wearing that red blouse I'd never seen before. For a moment, none of us moved. It was as if the air itself turned solid. Daniel turned first, his expression shifting from surprise to something colder, defensive. "You shouldn't be here," he said. His voice was calm, too calm. "And you shouldn't be with my wife." I shot back, my fists clenching before I even realized it. Emma stood up quickly. "Stop! This isn't what it looks like. Don't." I cut her off. "I'm done with the lies." Daniel stepped closer, and for a second, I thought he might try to stand between us. His tone was casual, but his eyes carried a hint of provocation. "Maybe you should ask yourself why she came to me in the first place." That was it. Something in me snapped. I lunged forward, grabbing him by the collar, slamming him into the wall so hard the cheap hotel painting rattled. "You think you know anything about us?" I hissed. "You think you can just take what you want?" Emma was shouting my name, trying to pull me back, but Daniel only smirked, like my anger was some kind of victory for him. I released him, shoving him back, the whiskey glass crashing to the floor. "You two deserve each other," I said, my voice low, shaking. "But you'll both regret this." I didn't wait for her to answer. I walked out, the hallway spinning around me, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. By the time I reached the parking lot, the rain had turned into a downpour. I stood there, soaked, gripping my car keys, breathing hard. My hands still smelled faintly of his cologne. I wasn't just leaving now. I was planning. That night, I didn't go home. I checked into a different hotel across town, a place where the neon sign flickered and the carpet smelled faintly of cigarette smoke. Lying on the bed, staring at the ceiling, I thought about what Daniel had said in that room. His smug tone. The way Emma didn't deny it. I could have just left, signed the divorce papers, moved on. But the more I replayed it, the more a simple exit felt inadequate. They had taken something from me, and I wasn't going to let them walk away untouched. The first step was information. I knew Emma's habits, her passwords, her routines. By morning, I'd accessed her email. I found their entire chain of messages, photos, plans, private jokes, even one where they fantasized about getting rid of me like I was an inconvenience rather than a human being. By noon, I'd also found Daniel's home address, workplace, and, most importantly, his financial history. Turns out, Mr. Perfect had a trail of unpaid debts and a nasty gambling problem he kept hidden. The second step was patience. I didn't confront them. I didn't answer Emma's calls or texts. Instead, I became invisible. I let them think I'd disappeared to lick my wounds. Meanwhile, I was talking to the right people, Daniel's debt collectors, a few less than legal contacts from my college days who owed me favors. The third step was letting the cracks spread. 2 weeks later, Daniel's boss received an anonymous package with copies of his private hotel bills and gambling receipts. Emma's company HR got an email containing the affair's evidence, sent from an untraceable account. Daniel lost his job within days. Emma was put on probation. But that wasn't enough. One rainy evening, I called Emma from a blocked number. She answered cautiously. "Hello? Enjoying the fallout?" I asked, my voice steady. "It's you," she breathed. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you looked me in the eye and lied," I said. "Because you thought you could throw me away like I was nothing." She started to cry, saying she made a mistake, that she still loved me. I let her speak. I even let her believe I might forgive her. Because the final step of my plan was still coming. 2 more weeks passed before I made my final move. It was a Friday evening, the kind of night when Seattle's streets glisten like liquid silver under the streetlights. I'd parked across from Emma's apartment building, not ours anymore, hers, and waited. At 8:17 p.m., Daniel showed up. No coat, just a hoodie pulled tight against the drizzle. He didn't look smug anymore. He looked tired. They went inside together. Lights flickered on in her living room. I gave it 5 minutes before walking up to the door and knocking, calmly, like a neighbor dropping by. Emma opened it. For a moment, she froze, her eyes darting between me and Daniel, who was standing just behind her. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice flat but trembling. I smiled, not warmly, not cruelly, just enough to unsettle them both. "To give you something." From my jacket, I pulled out a thick envelope. Inside were 2 things: divorce papers already signed by me, and copies of every damning document I collected. Bank records, love letters, hotel bills, everything. Daniel stepped forward, bristling. "What's this supposed to be? Blackmail?" "No," I said. "It's a gift. For you two to enjoy together, while your families, your friends, and your neighbors get their copies tomorrow morning." Emma's face went pale. "You wouldn't. You really don't know me at all," I cut in. I turned to leave, but at the last second, I stopped in the doorway. "One more thing," I said over my shoulder. "Every time it rains, I want you to remember this night. And remember that you made me into someone I didn't know I could be." I walked out into the rain without looking back. By the time I reached my car, I could hear raised voices behind the closed door. As I drove away, Seattle's skyline shimmered in the mist. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace. Not because I'd forgiven them, but because I'd made sure they could never outrun what they'd done. And in this city, where the rain never really stops, neither would the reminder. I thought it was over. For a while it was. I kept to myself, moved into a small apartment in Capitol Hill with creaky wooden floors and a window that looked over an alley where stray cats ruled the night. I got used to the quiet. No late-night arguments. No wondering where she was. But peace is fragile. One night, about a month later, I came home to find an envelope slid under my door. No return address, just my name scrawled in rushed handwriting. Inside were photos, grainy but clear enough, of me outside Emma's apartment the night I delivered the envelope. And there was a note. "You started a war. Now it's your turn to bleed." The next day, my boss called me into his office. Someone had sent, anonymous, documents accusing me of embezzlement, completely fabricated but damaging enough to trigger an investigation. I knew exactly whose hands were behind it. Daniel wasn't finished. That evening, as I walked home, I spotted a black SUV parked across the street from my building. The same SUV was there the next morning. And the next. Sometimes I catch a glimpse of someone in the driver's seat, but by the time I looked again, they were gone. I realized then that Daniel wasn't just trying to hurt me. He was trying to make me unravel. Emma called once, late at night. "You need to stop whatever you're doing to him," she said, her voice urgent. "I'm not doing anything," I replied, keeping my tone even. "Then why is he like this?" "He's different. Paranoid. Angry." I almost laughed. "Sounds familiar." She hung up. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about revenge anymore. Not just mine, not just his. This was something darker, something that wouldn't end until one of us was completely destroyed. And I wasn't planning on being the one buried. I started watching him. If Daniel wanted to turn this into a war, I was going to fight it on my terms. I began by tailing him after work. He'd leave whatever odd jobs he was doing now and drive aimlessly for a while, sometimes stopping at dingy bars, sometimes disappearing into side streets where the light didn't reach. One night, I followed him to a rundown warehouse on the outskirts of Georgetown. The place looked abandoned, but inside, faint light flickered. Through a cracked side window, I saw him talking to two men I didn't recognize, one of them counting stacks of cash, the other checking something in a small duffel bag. Guns. That's when I realized his debts weren't just financial. They were the kind that got people killed. The next morning, I called in a favor from an old college friend who now worked in private security. Within 2 days, I had a full dossier on Daniel, his unpaid loans, the bookies he owed, and, most importantly, a date and location for his next meeting. I didn't go to the police. That would have been too clean, too easy. No, Daniel needed to feel the ground give way under him the same way he tried to do to me. So I tipped off the very people he owed, making it sound like he'd been skimming from them. A simple anonymous message, backed up with a few forged bank statements, was all it took. 3 nights later, I saw him again, this time not in a bar or hotel, but sprinting down a rain-slick alley with 2 men chasing him. He looked terrified. For the first time, I didn't see the smug, confident Daniel I'd met in that hotel room. I saw someone cornered. Emma called me again that night. "He's gone," she said, her voice shaking. "I can't find him. His apartment's empty." "I'm sure he'll turn up," I replied, my voice calm. But deep down, I wasn't so sure. And if I was honest with myself, I didn't care. The problem was, wars like this never truly end. Because once you learn how far you're willing to go, there's no going back. 2 weeks passed without a trace of Daniel. At first, I thought it was over. He'd either skipped town or someone had made sure he wouldn't be coming back. I started sleeping better. I even let myself believe that I'd won. Then, one night, I came home to find my apartment door slightly open. I froze. The hallway was silent except for the faint hum of the old elevator. My instinct screamed to turn around and leave, but instead, I stepped inside. The place looked untouched until I reached the living room. On my coffee table sat a single Polaroid photo. It was of me, sleeping. In my bed? Taken last night. My chest tightened. I checked the locks, intact. The windows, still shut. Whoever had taken that picture had a key. The phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. A low male voice, calm and deliberate, said, "You made a mistake." I stayed silent. "You thought you could end this. But you didn't understand. Daniel wasn't alone in this. And now neither are you." The line went dead. For the first time since this whole thing started, I felt genuine fear. Not anger, not rage, but the kind that seeps into your bones and makes every shadow feel alive. I didn't know if Daniel was still alive. I didn't know who that voice belonged to. But I knew one thing: whatever game I thought I was playing, I wasn't the one in control anymore. And the war I'd started had just opened a much bigger door. The next few nights, I barely slept. Every creak in the hallway sounded like footsteps. Every car slowing outside my window made me reach for the baseball bat I now kept beside the bed. I started watching my own building the way I'd once watched Daniel, standing across the street with my hood up, scanning faces, looking for someone watching me. That's how I noticed the same man twice in 3 days. Tall, lean, wearing a black leather jacket, always smoking. On the 4th night, I decided to follow him. He led me to the south end of the city, near the docks, an area where the streetlights flickered and the air smelled of diesel and salt water. The buildings were a mix of old warehouses and bars with doors that only opened for people who knew the right knock. I watched from the shadows as he disappeared into one of those bars. I waited 15 minutes before going in. The place was dim, the kind of dark where you can barely see faces, only shapes. The smell of cheap whiskey clung to the air. I spotted him at the far end, talking to 2 men over a table littered with empty glasses. I ordered a drink I didn't want, keeping my head low. That's when I heard it, my name. Spoken quietly, but unmistakable. "He doesn't know yet," the man in the jacket said. "But he will. He'll pay what Daniel owed." My stomach sank. It wasn't just revenge. They wanted money. And judging by the look of these men, it wasn't the kind of debt you clear with a credit card. I left before they could see me, my mind racing. I didn't have that kind of money. Hell, even if I did, paying them wouldn't make me safe. That night, I realized I had 2 choices: run and spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, or go deeper into their world and end this before they ended me. I chose the second. The next morning, I reached out to people I'd once avoided, contacts from my college days, small-time hustlers who owed me favors, even a former detective friend who had left the force under suspicious circumstances. Each one was wary, asking why I needed help. I didn't tell them everything. I told them enough. By nightfall, I had a plan. First, I needed information. Names, habits, weaknesses. I returned to the docks, this time watching from a parked van, taking notes on who came and went, which doors led where, and which voices carried authority. Daniel's allies had routines, predictable patterns. That was their first mistake. Then I struck subtlety. Small disruptions at first. Phone lines tapped, deliveries misdirected, whispered warnings slipped into the right ears. Nothing violent yet. Just enough to create doubt. They began to watch each other, unsure of who might be betraying whom. I even left a trail for Daniel himself, letting him see that I was active, that I was aware. He called once, in disbelief, saying, "You can't do this forever." "Oh, I can," I replied calmly. "And I will." Over the next 2 weeks, the tide shifted. One by one, Daniel's men faltered, caught in their own webs of fear, exposed to debts and rumors I carefully planted. No one could trust anyone. And all the while, I stayed invisible. By the time I confronted Daniel again, he was alone, pale, twitching like a cornered animal. He knew the game was over, but I wasn't there to kill him. I was there to make him understand what fear really meant. "You thought you could ruin me," I said, standing over him. "But you forgot one thing. I don't play by the same rules you do." He swallowed hard, eyes wide, as the realization hit him. From that night on, the streets of Seattle felt different. Rain still fell, clouds still hung low, but I had reclaimed the balance. I had survived. I had adapted. And in this city of shadows and mist, I knew that being smart, patient, and ruthless when needed, that was the only way to stay alive. Weeks passed. Daniel had disappeared. No one knew where, and no one asked. The docks were quieter now, whispers of my actions circulating just enough to keep everyone wary. I had reclaimed control, but there was one final confrontation I couldn't avoid. Emma called me that evening. Her voice was fragile, almost a whisper. I need to see you." I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe in Capitol Hill, the kind where the rain streaked the windows and the warm lights barely cut through the gray. She looked smaller somehow, the confidence I remembered gone, replaced by guilt and fear. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, voice trembling. "Doing what?" I replied calmly. "Watching me, punishing me." "Daniel," she trailed off. I leaned back, studying her. "You made your choices, Emma. You lied. You cheated. You thought you could take what you wanted and walk away. But actions have consequences. All of this, is what happens when you cross someone who won't forgive or forget." She broke down, tears running freely now. "I was lonely. I made a mistake. Please, can we fix this?" I shook my head. "No. Some bridges can't be rebuilt. You made your decisions. I made mine. And I've chosen to walk away from this, for good." I left the cafe, stepping out into the drizzle. Seattle glimmered in the mist, familiar and indifferent. For the first time in months, I felt the weight lift. I hadn't forgiven, and I hadn't forgotten, but I was free. Emma would carry the consequences of her choices, and I would carry the lessons of mine. The rain washed over me as I walked away, leaving behind a city full of shadows, and a past that would never follow me again.